Hey guys, we're going to do the first session of art, and I figured what we would do is kind of do a recap of what we talked about in class, and that way that you could continue working throughout the week and still have some pretty good guidelines and kind of what to expect. So art in itself is simply making a mark with something onto something. That's basically what art is. It's as simple as that. The other thing that we looked at was this idea of what are the concepts that make a good picture as you're drawing it. And so what we talked about, well, there's three different things involved. One is one of the students I think brought up that there was effort involved, and I like that word effort because art is about effort. There's a lot of work that's involved with art, a lot of practice. It's drawing, it's drawing, it's drawing, and it's drawing. There's the other part, and that's the part that I hope to be able to teach in this semester, and that is the concept of how to see like an artist, being able to recognize patterns and shapes, and be able to put things together in a cohesive drawing that you can recognize as being something. The other aspect that we also look at is a part of kind of a design, which is once you know how to draw in terms of you know what to do, know what the tools, then you kind of gain the skills to draw something that looks like something. There is another aspect of design, composition. Um, most artists, most of your famous artists, will know exactly what they're doing in terms of they know what you're going to look at first. So that they help you zero in on the focal point of their painting, of their drawing, of their work. So with all of that kind of an intro, what we'll be looking at is this idea of a pencil. Um, so right now I'll be working with a 6B pencil, and that's just so that you can see my, my lines here. And what I'm asking to do is to think the concept of line and tone. So line and tone, these two things go hand in hand, but there are two independent elements of art. So when we talk about line, we're talking about the thing that you draw that defines edges. And we looked at, if you kind of picture a face, where are the edges in a face? So we have the line, and then we also have tone, where the line depicts a two-dimensional aspect. Tone depicts a three-dimensional aspect. And tone is what we often call shading, the darks to the lights. And so, again, I ask the students to kind of examine their own face or the face of their neighbors and ask them not only is where are the edges, where are their lines on the face, but also where is their tone, meaning where are the darks and where are the lights. Right? A lot of times when we start off drawing, we want to draw a lot like we are drawing, we're writing a note to our parents or to their teacher or whatever, or making or doing our homework. And this is a typical and a very useful way to hold your pencil. Have the students, and if you want to do this with me here on the video, is to across the top of the paper, from one edge to the other edge, is to draw lines uniform in length, about 2 inches or so, and draw them all the way across the paper. And this is what I typically saw. You ready? So we're drawing lines from one edge to the next edge, and it's just going to be a line. So ready? You can go ahead and draw it if you want to. Remember we talked about practice and muscle memory? Learning how to draw these lines is muscle memory. It's practice, just like you would practice throwing a ball. This is a very a meaning. It has a purpose by learning how to do these muscle memory. Trains your hand to follow your eye down these lines. And so you may want to start working and just draw lines across your paper. And that's actually a skill. Right there, line. But we also look at line. There are parts of the line that's unique as well. and I like to do threes or something like that, and also to have everything start with the same letter. And so I don't know what it is I need to do that. But so when you're drawing with a pencil, you have three parts, three characteristics to this line, which means how what is the pencil lead made of? Is it a 6B like this is, where it's going to be a very soft lead? So the properties of the pencil. So we're going to use a P. So properties of the pencil are different. If this is a soft lead, and if I want to use a harder lead, it's going to make a different kind of line because of the property of the pencil. Make sense? The other part of drawing a line is the pressure. How hard are you going to press into the paper? And so when you draw, you draw heavy lines, or you use very little pressure, and you draw a light line. And so we practice drawing a dark line, and a light line, a dark line, and a light line. Then we also went and said, let's see if we can vary that in the same line. So in one line, you would press down pretty hard and also press lightly, use less pressure. So now not only are you using the characteristics of the pencil itself to make the line, now you're using pressure. How hard to how soft. How hard to soft. And then just vary it any way that you want to. So while you're doing this with me, let me go ahead and explain about this idea of pressure. What's happening when you're putting this graphite onto the paper? If we were to take a microscope to this, the paper has got rough edges. It looks like mountains and valleys microscopically because the fibers of the paper. And what we're technically doing is we're taking the graphite from the pencil and we're scratching it onto the paper, and it's coming off in chunks and filling those valleys. Our pressure is also crushing some of those fibers, and so it is actually kind of putting a mark into the paper itself, and that's called etching. And one of the nuances to art and drawing this pencil line is to be able to fill those crevices, those little nooks and crannies of the paper with the graphite without necessarily crushing the fibers of the paper, etching that line in there. Because if you want to erase it, you can erase the graphite off the paper to some degree, but if you press too hard, you're still going to see that divot, that little indent of your line, and that never goes away. And that will affect your ability to correct mistakes. And so learning how, again, this goes back to practicing muscle memory, learning that nuance, that careful nuance between making the line dark and putting some pressure onto the paper without necessarily crushing the fibers. And so that takes a skill. All right, so we talked about properties of the pencil, and now we've talked about the pressure, but now we're going to look at the position of which you hold the pencil. And so when you're holding it like this is a very effective way to hold the pencil and make your lines, but you can also vary the position of the pencil. So what we've done is I had the students start off like this and then whip the pencil around like that. That also is muscle memory, being able to do that pretty smoothly. And so we kind of went through back and forth like this. So what this does, holding your pencil like this, with your forefinger on this point part, the lead part, not actually touching the graphite but touching the wood part, gives you that control that you would want to have. But then also you have all of this freedom of your pencil this way. And here's what this looks like when you're going over here. So I'm going to choose a different pencil that's got more of the graphite showing. Like that, okay? And I'm going to hold it like this. And so do you see that, Hannah? I've got it like this. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw lines across the paper again like this, but now I'm going to vary the position of the pencil. So I'm going to start off like this, perpendicular to the edge of the paper, and draw a nice thick line. Do you see that? And then I'm going to change the position of it and whip it around so it's parallel to the edge of the paper, and it draws differently. Do you see how that? And so now, you see how that works, Hannah? Is that what yours looks like too? So we've got this line now that has some character to it. It's not straight, but that's okay. Lines don't have to be straight to be considered lines. We're just varying the position of that pencil. We go all the way across. So while you're going across that paper, let me talk about what's happening in your forearm. Because whereas, when I say there's muscle memory, having your pencil holding your pencil like this, there is something kind of cool going on with your muscles in your arm. So I'm going to stop. You guys keep on drawing. So here's the idea: is that controlling your pencil going back and forth like this, it takes some practice and takes some muscle strength to do this. And so I'm encouraging your students to keep on drawing like this. And what happens is there's very little muscle actually in the hand itself. There's some muscle right here, but there's very little muscle actually in the fingers. Actually, there's no muscle in the fingers. All there is tendons going across. All the muscles that control the hand are in the forearm right here. And so you can see this, especially in my arm. I don't know why God made my arm like this, but when you move your fingers, you can see the muscles, which muscles are controlling the tendons. And so this muscle here is controlling that. Here's this muscle over here. So all the muscles that's controlling the hand are actually in the forearm. And so when I call this right here, this is my art muscle right there. There's this muscle that's right here. And it's because I've been working with this pencil for so long that I've actually kind of developed this Popeye thing going on right here. And so you're laughing because it's true, right? So we have this thing here. So it takes some muscle memory, takes some practice to be able to draw this way, but it's so worth it because you get so much characteristics coming from here. So with just this simple idea of line and tone, we now are able to put things together in a way that we can actually start creating something. Because now our lines have character, because we understand the principles of understanding that line, what you're putting on the paper, is dependent on the properties of the pencil. Is it soft or hard? The pressure that you're putting onto the paper with your pencil, is it hard? Is it a lot of pressure? Is it light pressure? And also the position of your pencil. All those things, just with line, now you're able to create something. And so here's just something right here. So we have, I'm going to put a couple of these lines together, Hannah. Watch what happens here. So I'm putting some of these lines, varying the pressure, and all of a sudden I have the beginning of a realistic looking tree. All because I just understood this idea of pressure, position, and properties of the pencil. All right, so I don't want to make this video too long. Right? So on a different sheet of paper, we talked about tone, and this is what we did. Tone is the ability to go from darks to lights. So I had them draw a square like this, and then they bisected the square into 4 parts. Do you see how that works, Hannah? Like that. All right, and then in this top square right here, we darkened that top square. I'm kind of going fast because I want to hurry up here. So we darkened this, and I asked them to keep this square white. Don't touch it. And the idea is to create shades of gray with your pencil, varying the pressure, and to be able to go between this black and this white. And so what I saw from all the students was something that looked something like this. Like that. Kind of work it over this way. There we go. So I did that. Is that what yours looks like, Hannah? Sure. Okay. And then we got that down. So the idea is be able to learn how to go from dark to light in a gradated way, in a value scale, is what artists also call this. Tone and the value of that tone. The next thing we did is we had them draw a larger square and divide it into 9 smaller squares. So put 2 lines that kind of divide that square up. And then, so it looks like this, looks like a Rubik's Cube. And then in this top square, darken this off. And then I said in this square, leave this light white. And then those that were boss level artists, I said I want this one to be the white square and to grade and to make a value scale from dark to this white using all these other squares. If you were still kind of a beginner, then you just use these 6 squares. And so what I saw from all of the students was a lot of them took the challenge and did this white square. And so this one was a little more gradual of a scale. Again, takes a little bit of work and reworking. Wanted to be able to see a difference between each square, but not that much of a difference. And it took some practice. And I also said no erasers. Some people try to pull out their erasers. Like that. That's a value. All right, so for their homework, what I asked them to do is to take one sheet of paper, and I wanted to have 2 shapes. And I said it could be circles, could be squares, could be wobbly dangs. I don't care. I'm using circles. I wanted to have 10 circles in whatever configuration we could do. These are kind of big, so I don't know if they're going to make theirs that big, but it uses a lot of pencil lead. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So starting off, and make the top square or top shape, whatever it is, your blackest black, the blackest they can get it. And then the bottom one, the whitest white, which is basically don't touch the paper. And then gradiate the values. So make a value scale using these 10 things. And I asked them to do it twice. So what we're looking at here is we're going to have, for next Monday, so we're going to have 2 sets of 10 of these value scales, these tone scales. And what I'm expecting to see is that the second one should be a little bit better than the first one. So those 2 things. So we've looked at line and we've looked at the tone shade. And then I've asked them to draw something using their skills of tone and of line and the characteristics of the line. And so we used things like rope, a crinkled up paper bag, something that has some kind of fabric that can be coiled up, that can be wrinkled up, so that they can see both line, where 2 edges come together, and also they can see tone, where there's shape involved, where there's a darks and there's lights and what that looks like. And so rope, fabric, all those paper, wrinkled up paper, all those have those characteristics in there. So they can learn how to draw the characteristics of the line, but also the nuances of that rope. And I asked them to look real close to that rope. Not the whole rope. Now this is the key part. Not the whole rope, not the whole thing of paper, but just a small part. So what I asked them to do is make a little ring out of their hands about the size of a silver dollar, and then look at their subject through their little viewfinder here, and then draw just that, whatever you see in this viewfinder. Don't be overwhelmed by the whole thing, just what's inside this tiny little viewfinder. What that's going to do is relieve a lot of pressure that I have to draw all this rope, but also it allows you to be able to focus intently on that one little part. Where is the darkest dark? Where is the lightest light? What are the characteristics of the line? And suddenly, what happens is you're not thinking about rope anymore. You're thinking about tone, line, and shape. So that's what we talked about the first lesson. It was a lot of fun. Keep on drawing, draw, and I can't wait to see what you come up with. Next week is Memorial Day, so I don't think we're going to have class, or Labor Day, so we may not have class. But I'll still do a video, and we'll talk more about pencil work. So it's going to be fun. All right. See you later. Bye. Nice tree. Oh, look. Ready? Student gallery. Right there. Look at that tree Hannah drew. That's a really good tree. You proud of that tree? Yeah, it's a good tree. Look at that.